Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with leaders that have overcome so that you know that the possibilities are endless. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses to work from their computers around the world, making money and owning their own time. Our featured guest today is Marquita Fields. Dr. Marquita Fields is an advanced practice registered nurse. She is the CEO of Fields Harvest Consulting. She is a nurse, author, teacher, and entrepreneur. She is inspired by women leaders, nurse changing the world, and diversity in all spaces. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
All right.
So now you said that you were in high school and you had a project to do, but did not know what to do. Now, how did James Brown, your predecessor, okay, well, tell us about James Brown, because James Brown wasn't the typical James Brown.
No. So we had to do a senior project in high school. And one of the things that we had to do was hook up with a mentor in some field that we were interested in and kind of shadow them and see what their life was like and write a paper about it. And we had to do so many hours in that field. And I was just like, I don't know what I want to do. And they had mentors that were available and I didn't have to look for one. So I was like, oh, I'll do that. That's easy. And so I was assigned to Mr. James Brown, who was a registered nurse in the pediatric floor at the hospital. James Brown in my brain was like, you know, the big payback, James Brown. But when I met James Brown, he was a white male with red hair and blue eyes. So I was like, okay, this is going to be different.
So now, then what did he help you do with the project? What was the project about?
So he was the first person that made me feel like, you know, it wasn't an option. You're going to be a nurse. And he kind of showed me the ropes of what nursing was all about. I thought nursing was just, you know, you wore a little white dress, a little white hat, you listened to the little doctors and you walked around and that's all you did. And he showed me how to care for patients, how to be there and sit in there and hold patients, talk to them, how to analytically think about what you're doing and the care that you're providing. And the whole professionalism side of things, you know, how to delegate, how to be a leader in your workplace. And I was like, wow, I can do that. And he didn't even give me the option to do anything else. He said, this is what you're going to do. And
I
so
love it.
Impactful. Mm-hmm.
You know, I was talking to this young man the other day. So he called me up. He called me up specifically because he wanted to know how to get hours at the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what are you trying to do? And he said, I'm trying to be a PA. And I said, you're trying to be a PA? And he said, yes. And so I said, well, are you trying, what exact, I said, are you in the program? What exactly is going on? And he said, no, I'm not in the program, but unless like you have some previous experience, like you've been a paramedic, then coming into the program you have to have a certain number of hours. And I was like, so why don't you just become a nurse? And he was like, well, I hadn't really thought about that. And I don't think I said, look, let me tell you something. I said, as a nurse, you got to take that NCLEX once. Okay. As a PA, you got to take that whole thing. I said, you got to take that test every 5 years. Ain't nobody got time for that foolishness.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
not that I don't love PAs. We love y'all, okay? But I mean, if we want to go there, right?
Yeah, I agree completely. I completely agree.
So now there was a time during your nursing career when you were burned out. Why do you think that this happened? And what was some of the advice that you would give some of those in the nursing profession to battle burnout?
So for me, it was probably around the 10-year mark of being a registered nurse. And I had done a lot of different things and I had gotten really good at surgical nursing, which is what I was doing at that moment. And I think once you get really, there's that Benner's model of like novice to expert. When you get to the expert at something and you feel like you can't learn anymore, it's time to change, do something different. And the beautiful thing about nursing is that there's a million different things you can do.
That part.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. I was finding that was like going through the rigmarole. clock in 6:45, take care of the patients or charge nurse or whatever I had to do that day, and then go home and do it all over again. And it was getting very repetitious and not very joyful, I guess. And so I decided to go into education, and did that for a little while because I thought maybe that would be something I wanted to do. And not knocking anyone that does education, but that is not the area for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not the traditional hospital education in that realm. And so then I decided, hey, let's go back to school and do nurse practitioner. Let's have a different perspective from the nursing avenue. And I thought that would be a good avenue to go in. And it was so worth it, every last minute of it.
But I think that, it's very valuable what you said about that monotonous routine. And I am a huge on professional development.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I think professional development is so important is because professional development gives you what you need in order to be able to in order to be able to advance. Because if you're not advancing, you're staying stagnant. And typically, if you're stagnant, then you're moving backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me about when you said that education was not for you. So tell me why education was not for you. So tell me a little bit about that.
So the facility I worked at, their education model was you'd have a nurse that educated several floors, and you did on one-on-one training and training with staff members one-on-one, just on different floors. And it would not necessarily be your floor of expertise. So say I'm a surgical nurse, but I'm training on a pediatric floor. Yeah, you just got assigned to wherever there was a need. And I didn't like it because I felt like I wasn't able to pour into people exactly what my expertise was. And it was very structured in a way that was overall cookie cutter instead of personalized. I felt like, when in my day, when I started nursing, when I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
you learned from your preceptors on the floor. They got out there with you. You had a load of patients and they were accessible to you, and you learned that way. And it was the best way to learn. And so I felt like I couldn't give the people I was teaching that kind of experience.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, and not knocking that, but I think that that's probably the reason why you were able to move from that space. And that was meant to be, because that doesn't work, right? I mean, as an ER nurse, I can't go in and teach ICU. As an ER nurse, I probably can go to the med-surg floor,
right.
But I can't. I can probably go to pediatrics even, right? So, but it's really But what I can do is go to the women's center. Okay, let's be very clear on that. Okay,
Exactly.
And so that just I don't know where they got that. That's crazy.
I thought it was the weirdest way of doing things, but I mean, it worked with budget cuts, as all fields are taken, where instead of having one designated person for one floor, you have people for, all of a section, and you have less people you have to hire for that than you do for others.
But the reality is that that's not good for the patient, though.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, the patient is not cared for with a specialty that they need to be cared for, right?
I agree.
And so that's just not even good. But whatever. That's that's them. We're just here to bring knowledge to the crew.
Right.
Now, what is the reason why you wanted to get your DNP?
So it was an accident.
You don't get your DNP on accident. To the crowd.
I decided, after doing my education stint, I decided I want to do my nurse practitioner. I was like, I want to be a family nurse practitioner. I want to take care of people from the other side of things. Because as nurses, we diagnose anyway. We're just not allowed to legally. But I mean, what's wrong with your patient. So I thought, okay, I want to be a nurse practitioner. I lived at that time in Greenville, North Carolina. The closest school to me was East Carolina University, who did not offer a master's program for nurse practitioner. And so the only way I could do a nurse practitioner in my local area was to do the doctoral of nursing practice.
Wow.
So that's kind of how that happened. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll just do the DNP. I'll just have a terminal degree instead. And that'll be fine. And so that's kind of how I ended up with the DNP.
Gotcha. Now that might be an accident. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. It's like, how you just roll into that?
I know.
So now you went into urology.
Mm-hmm.
What was your rationale for picking this as a specialty out of all the specialties?
I know, all the things I could have done. So, I worked as a surgical nurse. I worked with all different types of physicians and NPs and PAs. And I was very fortunate to meet a group of providers that was very nurturing, that were very down to earth. And I felt like, hey, my personality meshes well with them. I feel like I know a little bit coming to the table, and I feel like they'll nurture me to become a good provider, because you start over once you get your nurse practitioner. You have this nursing background, but it's a different profession. So you learn a little bit differently. And so that kind of led me in that direction. What I did not know was all of the urology outpatient stuff that I would be doing. And boy, is it interesting.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So now tell me, so as it relates to you going from nurse to nurse practitioner, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me some of the nuances of that. So tell me some of the ways in which you were able to do that successfully and not struggle, because you really go back to novice once you go to an NP. That's what I've heard. Now, my DNP is in leadership, so it's a little bit different. But just tell me just some of the nuances in going into practice that way.
So one of the things about make sure I answer your question correctly. So you wanted to know,
like, what is the mindset from being a nurse to going to an NP? Like, how did you navigate those roles?
So the biggest thing is getting over imposter syndrome.
That's what someone else said to me. SD Grindle said that.
Because you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the one writing this order. I was just a nurse Friday. How am I writing the orders on Monday? And so like that part was a little bit difficult. But I think I had really good mentors that allowed me to realize, hey, no, this is what you trained for. And these things, just think of it as a nurse. Think of it as if you were on that floor taking care of that patient. What does that patient need? And work off that. Go strictly just think about your patient. Don't think about, you're this role and they're that role or whatever. Just think about what does your patient need and take care of your patient. And once I did that, it was a lot easier. Also, not working where I started off. I worked in the same facility, but not on the same floor as a nurse practitioner. And I learned a long time ago from a previous mentor that I had that it's hard to grow where you are. And so sometimes it's better to go to a different area. So instead of me working on the same floor as a nurse practitioner, I went to a different area so that I could command the same level of respect as all the other providers. Because, that's hard. That's difficult for people that work side by side with you to see you in a different role. And so I think that helped a lot, not being in the area.
I love it. So now your husband is a nurse. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of having a nursing spouse?
Yes, he drank the Kool-Aid and became a nurse. The advantages are, so the advantage is our conversations are about medicine and about healthcare are very candid and no hold bars. Our poor kids know a lot about IVs and all types of medical stuff that we just talk about just in general. So that's kind of nice. I can talk to him and I don't have to water it down. I can say, this whole process of what we're doing with this is not really working, or, and it's easy language. The disadvantages are I can't get anything by on him. Like I can't say, oh, I got a headache or something like that. He's like, well, why didn't you take the Motrin? Or, you didn't take your Zyrtec last night. This is why your allergies, so I can't get that.
Yeah, that can be a disadvantage because, we'll let you have pneumonia. You know how that is, right?
Right.
You'll go to work with pneumonia and we'll be like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. My husband says that all the time. He's like, you give me no slack. And I'm
Mhm.
like, like, I see people dying. So I
Right,
struggle. I'm sorry.
right, exactly, exactly.
So now you teach in the nurse practitioner program. What is the advantages and disadvantages? Now, so you said that you don't like education, but you like education in the I guess in academia, like in the
Right. So I teach in a program that is a nurse practitioner residency.
mhm.
So what this is like nurse practitioners, physician assistants that have already started working, that their employer wants to give them some enrichment, and so they're learning like different parts about being a provider outside of school.
Gotcha.
hmm And I
Gotcha.
love it because I get to teach what I want to teach and what I'm passionate about, which is a game changer from teaching something I had no idea about.
Yeah. And it does make a difference. It really does make a difference as to what you
hmm
teach about and what you like, what your target audience is, right? And
Right.
that's the same in business. So I tell people all the time that if you want to learn how to grow your CNA school, or if you want to
hmm
learn how to grow your phlebotomy school, like I'm not your girl, right? Because
Right.
that's not my passion. That's not what I
Mhm.
want to do. I know that there are people out there that do that, but I
Right.
teach a bit of a different aspect of nursing and business. And so it's huge. Now, you teach diversity and inclusion. Why is it
hmm
such a passion for you?
So when I finished MP school, um, one of the things I noticed was that there were not a lot of people in provider roles at my current facility that looked like me. And I thought, wow, this is lonely. And I said, okay, well, I wonder if I'm the only person experiencing this. And so I wanted to create an area that was a safe space and a networking space for people of color. And so that's kind of how that came about.
Gotcha. Now, tell us about microaggressions. What are they and why are they and what are some ways that you deal with them?
So microaggressions came about because kind of in that same realm, I was working and seeing that because I was one of the only people that looked like me, a lot of my colleagues did not know how to address certain things, and they were saying things not, all well intentioned, but really it was kind of an aggressive type thing. So, for example, like I would hear a comment about something. This was during the time of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all these different things that were going on in the national setting. And my colleagues would say things and then look at me for the Black perspective. I felt like it was like, you need to give the Black perspective. And I don't think they meant it in a bad way. They really want to know my opinion, but it's still a microaggression. And the way I knew it, because it didn't feel right.
So now tell me an instance. Tell me what like a specific question, for example.
Oh, one of the things I remember hearing was, you are so educated and you're so, very professional. Not what I would have expected. Yeah. So what did you expect? Or you have I've heard you're like the least Black person that I know, or something like that. Or, you're the whitest Black person that I know. And I'm like, what does that mean? you know? So things like that. And I think they were thinking they were making a compliment, but it's not a compliment. You know what I mean?
No.
It's actually quite the opposite. And so just educating people on these sort of things, educating folks in the best way possible, because that's a great area where you can go and turn into the angry, loud, irritated person, or you can really take a moment to educate someone so that they never do this again. And so those opportunities kept arising, and it became more evident last year with all of what was going on. So I was like, oh, this will be a perfect opportunity to do that. And so there's microaggressions and there's macroaggressions too, where people just say stuff straight out the gate that's just wrong. Like, so that kind of helped too.
Gotcha. I love it. Now tell me a book that has impacted you and why was it so impactful?
Mm. There is a book I read last year because I read it all the time, but this one was really good. It was called Homegoing by
Mm-hmm.
Yara Ghiazi, and I may
Mm-hmm.
be butchering her name. But it's a book that discusses two women. They're both born in Africa. They're sisters, and they're born in two different tribes. And it follows the lineage of these two women over the course of about 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're born back when slavery had just begun, and it brings them up to now. And you see just how the pathway, one was sold into slavery, one was not and lived in Africa. And you see the pathways of how African American and African lives would be different had we not had ancestry over here versus ancestry there. It's just to see the parallel and how they.
Ah,
Mhm.
and it's called Homebound,
Homegoing by
Homegoing.
Yara Giashi.
Okay. All right.
It was really interesting because you identify with so many parts of it, and it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, this happened because of this, and this happened because of that. Especially now when you're looking at, like, the big topic is institutional racism and those sort of things. You look back at this and you see why these things happen now. It's because of all the things that happened in the past, and it was really insightful. I think that was probably my recent, my recent book that probably impacted me.
Gotcha. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna have to go out and look for that one.
Mhm.
Now tell us a person that has impacted your career, your life, and your career as a nurse.
Uh, that would be, kind of got two people.
Okay.
One would be my grandmother. My grandmother was very special to me. She was very pro me. She was pro me. Like, whatever I wanted to do, she was all for it. And so she was very supportive in the sense that, no one in my family went to college. No one hardly graduated high school. And so for someone to graduate high school, go to college, to do anything more than middle school was a big deal. And so she was very much an advocate of whatever I did, get my education. And so that I had that in the back of my head every time I did anything. And so that was really impactful for me. I was like, I got to make Granny proud. And then the other person would probably be my mom. She got very ill and had a severe stroke a couple years back. And having to take care of her and be nurse at home was a whole different animal than taking care of people, in the institutional setting. And so it impacted our whole family. It's actually why my husband went back to nursing school, just having to take care of her. And so just kind of wanted to be more of a nurturer of a nurse than just at work, doing it at home, and kind of seeing how it comes full circle.
And that's really, really good because, once you set that expectation for your children, you
Mhm.
set that expectation for them. A lot of times, a lot of people don't set the expectation for their children.
Right.
And so, it's just like you kind of do what you do, right? And so some people learn by their, each instance where they are in life, they learn how to do or learn how to level up. But
Mhm.
it's important that, your home life at home is where you should learn that the
Absolutely.
for the most part, right? And so, it was kind of funny when you said that because this morning, my grandkids were here, my two grandboys, and we were talking, and I said, you guys are going to grow up to be phenomenal men, right? You're going to be amazing men. And, just learning that you were just raising, and I didn't know this when I was, a young mother. I didn't get it, right? I didn't get that I'm raising small humans,
Right.
adults, small
Mhm.
adults, right? And so I have to speak to them like they're adults. And I have to be that, this is where we're going. This is the trajectory of your life, and it's going to be very different. And so that's huge. That's huge. So thank you, thank you, thank you for showing up today.
Oh,
Um,
you.
we have just finished our VP Nursing Business Academy 4-day masterclass. It was such a phenomenal event. You still have time to sign up for VP Nursing Business Academy. We can jump on a call so you're able to gain clarity on how to create multiple streams of income. You can sign up at vpnursing.com. I ask that you like and share this podcast. And Morning Infusion is all about where we're intentional about connecting you with leaders that have overcome, such as Dr. Fields. So thank you, Dr. Fields, for showing up. And you guys have a phenomenal